A very warm good afternoon to everyone. And today we are having a CME on preterm labor. And for this, we have a first session. We have a first session where there's a talk on preterm labor and tocolysis, the recent updates by myself, Dr. Nakshi Sharma. And we have the chairpersons with her, Dr. Sangeeta Gupta, Dr. Ila Gupta, and Dr. Mamta Mittal. Dr. Sangeeta Gupta, ma'am, is a director professor of Obs and Gynae in Maulana Azad Medical College. Ma'am has established a fetal medicine clinic at MAMC and Lady LNH, New Delhi, and has vast experience in the invasive procedures. She's been awarded the Commonwealth Scholarship in 2007 and trained in fetal medicine. It's really an honor for us to have ma'am with us to chair the session. Next, we have Dr. Ila Gupta ma'am with us. Ma'am is senior consultant at Max Hospital, Vaishali and Paparganj. And ma'am has been practicing in this area in East Delhi for last 30 years. Ma'am has been past vice president and editor of IMA East Delhi branch. And ma'am has been a past president East Delhi Gynae Forum, as now an advisor. Next, we have, I will stop sharing this. Sorry, I didn't. I missed Dr. Mamta Mittal ma'am's slide.
That's all right, Dr. Meenakshi. Let's continue.
So we just introduced Dr. Mamta Mittal Meenakshi.
No, that's all right, Dr. Meenakshi. Let's continue.
It's been indeed a pleasure to have Dr. Mamta Mittal with us. She's the president of the DGF North, and a very dynamic, very humble, and a very sincere person. And it's really always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for coming and joining us, Dr. Mamta.
Thank you,
Mamta ma'am. Thank you, Mamta ma'am. Now I'll start with my talk. Preterm labor and recent updates. Basically, we know that more than 15 million babies are born preterm every year, and prematurity is the leading cause of death among children who are less than 5 years of age. And it's almost responsible for nearly 1 million deaths in 2015. Almost 3/4 of them could be saved with the current cost-effective interventions. And we know that the incidence, more than 60% of the preterm births occur in Africa and South Asia. And of all the 10 countries, India leads in the greatest number of preterm births. And almost 58% of the preterm births occur between 35 to 36 weeks, and almost 8% occurs greater than 32 weeks of gestation. We know that preterm birth leads to high mortality and morbidity in the neonates. There's increased mortality to almost 3 times at 35 to 36 weeks as compared to the term babies, and has the morbidities of respiratory distress requiring oxygen, temperature instability, hypoglycemia, jaundice, and attention deficit disorders. And it has increased hospitalization cost almost 3 times higher, and risk of re-hospitalization from 2 weeks to 6 months post-discharge. And the major causes of preterm birth is basically preterm rupture of membranes in almost 30%, 25 to 30% are unexplained, and iatrogenic is seen in almost 20%, and 25% are due to almost infections and other inflammatory process which is going on in the body. And the main diagnosis is basically a patient presents with the regular contractions of the uterus, which results in changes in the cervix, leading to effacement and dilatation that start before the 37 weeks of pregnancy. And NICE into 2020, the recent guidelines, they have defined the preterm labor as suspected preterm labor, diagnosed preterm labor, and established preterm labor. Based on the findings, suspected preterm labor occurs in women who reports with symptoms of preterm labor and has had a clinical assessment that confirms the possibility of preterm labor but rules out established labor. Diagnosed preterm labor are the women who are suspected to have preterm labor and have been diagnosed by a positive diagnostic test of preterm labor. I'll be talking in detail about. And established preterm labor, when a woman who is in established preterm labor, if she has a progressive cervical dilatation from 4 centimeters along with the regular contractions. So the diagnostic preterm test for preterm labor are a transvaginal cervical length of less than 15 millimeters in women who are more than 30 weeks of pregnancy, or a positive fetal fibronectin test, when a quantitative test shows the levels of fetal fibronectin, which is more than 50 micrograms per ml. And the positive predictive value of a positive fetal fibronectin test, as per the ACOG bulletin in 2016, the test result or a short cervical cervix alone is a poor indicator and should not be used exclusively to direct management in the settings of acute symptoms. So when the patient is presenting with a contraction, the symptoms of the preterm labor, it should be managed as a patient who is in preterm labor. And should women with the preterm contractions but without the cervical changes be treated? This was a question which is raised in ACOG bulletin 2016. With the evidence that the women with preterm pains without the cervical changes, only 18% gave birth before 37 weeks of gestation, and only 3% gave birth within 2 weeks of presenting with symptoms. 30% of preterm labor pains spontaneously resolves, and 50% of such women deliver at term. There is no evidence exists to support the use of prophylactic tocolytic therapy. And the WHO has categorized preterm birth as extremely preterm, less than 28 weeks, very preterm in 28 to less than 32 weeks, and moderate to late preterm in 30 to 37 weeks. And the induction of cesarean birth should not be planned before 39 completed weeks unless medically indicated, to avoid the preterm delivery because of the wrong dates. Pathophysiological mechanism, I will not be going in detail. It's mainly because of the activation of the HPA axis, inflammatory reaction, decidual hemorrhage, or pathological uterine distension, which may lead to preterm birth. And progesterone has a basically can inhibit these mediations, and by progesterone therapy, we can prevent prematurity, preterm labor. So the role of progesterone is basically it inhibits the cervical ripening, it reduces the myometric contractility, and reduces the oxytocin receptor synthesis. It reduces the oxytocin receptor function. So can we prevent preterm labor? We can screen the preterm labor by a modifiable risk factors, non-modifiable risk factors based on the cervical length, ultrasonography of the cervical length, per speculum examination, screening for vaginal infections and bacterial vaginosis. So the risk factors for the spontaneous preterm birth are maybe modifiable or non-modifiable. Non-modifiable risk factors are history of previous preterm birth, African American race, age less than 18 or more than 40 years, poor nutrition, low pregnancy weight, or low socioeconomic status, or the absent prenatal care, or a cervical injury, or a trauma, or a surgery previously, or uterine anomalies, and over-distended uterus. Modifiable risk factors are cigarette smoking, illicit drug use, anemia, bacteriuria, UTI, gingival diseases, strenuous work environment, and a lower GI infections and a stress. These can be modified. So the strategies for prevention of preterm, there are many strategies which have been tried previously and have found to be limited or no proven efficacy are the bed rest, pelvic rest, intensive education and prenatal care, screening and treatment of asymptomatic lower GI infection, empirical broad spectrum antibiotic therapy, and a prophylactic tocolytic therapy. So they are of no benefit. The strategies which may have a benefit are prevention and early diagnosis of the sexual transmitted infections, treatment of lower GI genital tract infections, cessation of smoking and drug abuse, prevention of multiple pregnancies by strictly regulating the ART procedures, elective cervical circulars, and a folic acid supplementation. So there are two-pronged strategies to prevent the preterm labor. The progesterone therapy, it can be in the form of IM progesterone, 17 OHP, 250 mg, or a vaginal progesterone suppository, 200 microgram daily, or a vaginal gel, 90 mg daily, or a cervical circulars, or a pessary. Prophylactic vaginal progesterone and a circulars, NICE in 2020 says you can offer a choice. They are both effective, and we can offer a choice for the patients to choose either of them. If a woman have both the history of prior preterm birth or a transvaginal scan, which is carried out between 16 to 24 weeks of pregnancy, that shows a cervical length of 25 millimeter or less. And a prophylactic vaginal progesterone should be considered, can be considered when either of the two parameters are there. If there's a prior history of spontaneous birth or a transvaginal scan showing a cervical length of less than 25 millimeter. And whenever prophylactic vaginal progesterone therapy is really started, it should be started from 16 weeks to 24 weeks as early as it can be started, and it should continue till 34 weeks of pregnancy. Prophylactic cerclage, according to the NICE 2020 guidelines, it says that considered in women with scans showing a length of cervix less than 25 millimeters, which is done between 16 to 24 weeks of pregnancy, and who have either a PPRM in previous pregnancy or a history of cervical trauma. So in these patients, we should consider prophylactic cerclage, and if cerclage is used, there should be a plan in place for removal. And rescue cerclage should be considered for women who presents with preterm labor between 16 to 27 weeks and 6 days of pregnancy with a dilated cervix and exposed membranes. And it should not be offered if there are signs of infection or active vaginal bleeding or uterine contractions. So progesterone recommendation according to the US FDA, the American guidelines, the Canadian guidelines, they recommend the 17 OHP. They say this is the current SMFM guidelines, which was published in 2012 and then it was reaffirmed in 2016. In singleton gestations with prior preterm birth at less than 37 weeks, 17 OHP to 50 milligram IM weekly was started as early as 16 to 20 weeks till 36 weeks is been recommended. In these women with prior preterm birth, if transvaginal scan cervical length is less than 25 millimeters at 24 weeks, cervical cerclage may be offered. In women with singleton pregnancies with no prior preterm birth and presents with a short cervix of less than 20 millimeters at less than 24 weeks of pregnancy, vaginal progesterone, either 90 milligram gel or 200 milligram suppository, is associated with reduction in preterm birth and perinatal morbidity and mortality and can be offered in these patients. So this is the tabulated form. This is published in 2012, but it has been updated in 2016, and there are no much changes. It also says basically the single-term pregnancies with prior spontaneous birth, they should be offered a 17 OHP, and a singleton without prior stillbirth with a cervical length which is less than 20 millimeters, vaginal progesterone gel or a suppository should be offered to such patients. However, there is no evidence of effectiveness in multiple gestations in patients who are symptomatic with preterm labor and PPRM. There is no evidence of effectiveness in such patients. This was a recent trial, this is an EPIC trial, which has been published in 2021 recently in March. And it was basically a multicentric trial, meta-analysis of basically 31 trials where individual participant data has been analyzed from the RCTs. All the RCTs have retrieved the individual participant data and analyzed it. So they have seen that out of 31 trials, almost 11,000 women were recruited in this study, and a vaginal progesterone in 9 trials, 17 OHP in 5 trials, and oral progesterone in 2 trials have been associated with preterm birth reduction significantly. The interpretation is that the vaginal progesterone and 17 OHP both reduce the preterm birth before 34 weeks gestation in high-risk singleton pregnancies. Given increased underlying risk, absolute risk reduction is greater for women with a short cervix, and treatment might be most useful for this woman. Evidence of oral progesterone is insufficient to support its use, and treatment of unselected multifetal pregnancies with a progestogen is not supported by the evidence. So now we come to the treatment of the preterm labor. A woman who has already established, have come to us in preterm labor. The treatment goals are to prevent preterm birth, which I have already told, it's before the onset of preterm birth. Education of the patient, preserve the maternal health, minimize the perinatal morbidity and mortality, and to optimize the fetus in preparation for delivery. And the management of preterm labor is basically mainstay is a tocolysis, which should be offered between 24 to 34 weeks and should be considered in 23 to 24 weeks in centers where neonatal survival is possible at such early gestations. Corticosteroids should be offered between 24 to 34 weeks and should be considered between 34 to 36 weeks. Magnesium sulfate should be offered between 24 to 30 weeks in established preterm labor and should consider between 23 to 24 weeks or 34 to 36 weeks, where efficacy is not much. Antibiotic prophylaxis should be given only for PPORM. So there are problems with tocolysis. The effectiveness depends on the ripeness of the cervical dilatation. If a woman has progressed to more than 4 centimeters, then tocolysis is less effective. It may delay delivery for short periods, usually for 24 to 48 hours, not usually beyond 1 week. Maternal death may occur, and there is an increased risk for chorioamnitis. So all these things we should consider in mind whenever we are starting the patient. The benefits of tocolytic therapy is in short-term prolongation of pregnancy, which enables us the administration of the antenatal steroids and magnesium sulfate for neuroprotection in very preterm babies and transport of the patient to the tertiary care facilities. There are contraindications of tocolytic therapy, the lethal fetal anomalies or the demise, non-reassuring fetal status, severe PET or eclampsia, IUGR, severe APH, maternal heart disease, and chorioamnitis. So the treatment, basically, we have many drugs which are available, which belongs to various classes. There is a beta agonist, isoxaspirin and erythrodrine, oxytocin antagonist, atosiban, nitric oxide donors, GTN, calcium channel blockers, nifedipine, and others, magnesium sulfate. Isoxaspirin, basically, it's a beta sympathomimetic. It was the first beta agonist to be used to arrest the preterm labor. It's a potent vasodilator. It is approved by DCGI, and ACOG recommends beta sympathomimetics as the first-line treatment in the management of preterm labor. And this is given usually in a IV infusion. We start with a 4 ampoules in 500 ml of dextrose or RL, and start at 8 to 10 drops per minute and increase by 8 drops increments every 15 minutes till the uterus becomes quiet. And the maximum dose is not to exceed 0.5 milligram. We should always monitor the blood pressure, and dose can be titrated as per the response of the patient. This is a very interesting study I want to highlight in my presentation. This is a multicentric retrospective study which is done in India in 5 centers, and a total of 285 patients with preterm labor. They have seen that almost 60% of the patients were given isoxaspirin and 24% patients were given nifedipine. And they have seen that the patients who were given isoxaspirin, the prolongation of delivery beyond 48 hours was observed in almost 57% as compared to 34% in patients receiving nifedipine. The mean latency period, the birth weight, and the Apgar score at 5 minutes was higher for isoxaspirin compared to nifedipine group patients with mean gestational age of less than 32 weeks, which is a significant P level. And the main side effects are basically mainly cardiovascular with increased heart rate and hypotension, chest pain. Rarely pulmonary edema can develop in these patients, and especially there's a concurrent use of corticosteroid in preterm patients who are on tocolysis. This is a complication which everyone should be careful about. Increased liver and muscle glycogenolysis causing hyperglycemia, so diabetic patients should be closely monitored, and it may cause hypokalemia. So prostaglandin synthase inhibitors, indomethacin, were also being given, but the main problem are that decreases the fetal renal blood flow. It causes premature closure of ductus arteriosus, which leads to pulmonary hypertension, especially in patients who are more than 2 weeks of gestation, necrotizing enterocolitis, and fetal intracranial hemorrhage. These are the problems with indomethacin. Calcium channel blockers, nifedipine is very commonly used. Given in a dose of 20 to 30 milligrams of loading dose, and then 10 to 20 milligram every 6 hours over 1 minute. And the side effects are basically headache, flushing, tachycardia, and hypotension. Is contraindicated in cardiac disease, maternal hypotension, renal disease, and one should avoid concomitant magnesium sulfate therapy when the patients are being put on nifedipine. NICE 2020 supports the nifedipine for tocolysis, and it says that offer nifedipine for tocolysis as a first-line treatment to women between 26 to 34 weeks of pregnancy who have intact membranes and are in suspected or diagnosed preterm labor. Dose 20 milligram oral stat followed by 10 to 20 milligram 3 to 4 times daily, and it's contraindicated. If it is contraindicated, one should offer an oxytocin receptor antagonist for tocolysis, and NICE do not recommend beta mimetics for tocolysis because of adverse effects. Atosiban is the oxytocin antagonist, which is given in a dose of 6.75 milligrams over 1 minute. followed by an infusion of 18 milligram per hour for 3 hours, then followed by a 6 milligram per hour for 45 hours. And the main side effect is a headache, allergic reactions, and nausea, and contraindications are none. But the thing is, this is costly. This is a Foxy algorithm. I won't be going in detail because it's blurry image, but I just want to highlight that beta-adrenergic receptor agonist like isosprin has been approved for preterm labor in India. Atosiban is beneficial in cardiac disease and is approved, and indomethacin we should be careful, but can be given in patients with polyhydramnios and cardiac disease. One should be it might be useful, especially in gestation less than 32 weeks. Nifedipine is basically is not approved for preterm labor by DCGI in India. This is a preterm labor algorithms, which basically says that parenteral isosprin or atosiban to be considered for tocolysis, corticosteroid and magnesium sulfate to be given for preterm labor. And maintenance, they have also mentioned in the Foxy algorithm that isosprin hydrochloride orally or a 17 OHP IM once a week. Magnesium sulfate basically is given for neuroprotection in the babies which are less than 32 weeks of gestation. It has a side effect of warm and flushing, respiratory arrest, and fetal hypotonia due to decreased calcium. And magnesium sulfate basically is for neuroprotection. However, it is a tocolytic as well, but the prevention of preterm birth, the tocolytic effect is much less. Reduction of preterm birth has been possible. According to the ACOG recommendations, they have are able to reduce the preterm birth in US. Progesterone treatment for those at high risk of preterm delivery, and stricter guidelines for ART with a single embryo transfer, and a reduction of elective early term deliveries before 39 weeks because of the possibilities of incorrect estimation of gestation age. These in fact could potentially be born preterm. So these recommendations help to decrease the incidence of preterm birth in United States. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Meenakshi. It was a wonderful lecture, very extensively covered. So may I ask the chairpersons to please, Dr. Sangeeta?
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to thank the East Delhi Gynae Forum to collaborate with NACHI for this CME. We are very thankful for that. And Dr. Sharda Jain, ma'am, she's not only a very astute clinician, a great academician, but also a lady with great vision, which is obvious with this Delhi Gynae Forum doing so well. And I think the topic picked up for today's deliberations is very pertinent. It has been long ignored, and we bearing the maximum brunt of this in the world. We should aggressively address it. I would like to congratulate Dr. Meenakshi for a very comprehensive and lucid presentation, which has very clearly given us all the messages. My request on this forum would be that we as obstetricians take up our responsibility. First of all, there are two fronts which I want to address. One, we have a big role in prevention of iatrogenic prematurity. And as Dr. Meenakshi highlighted, that despite delivery beyond 34 weeks, even at 35 to 36 weeks, we are tripling the mortality rates. So we must be very, very careful in, choosing the patients whom we are going to induce and what gestation we are going to induce. Even inductions before 39 weeks or deliveries before cesareans before 39 weeks have their own issues. And we must not close our eyes to them. The other issue which I want to highlight and is very close to my heart, and you would be seeing it in the forthcoming NACHI conference also, which we try to address, is the misuse and overuse of antenatal corticosteroids. A lot of literature has come up. The overuse of corticosteroids is definitely harmful for the baby. So we should be very careful and only very selectively we should administer antenatal corticosteroids when we are very sure, we're almost sure that yes, this baby is likely to deliver within next 7 days and the baby is less than 34 weeks. With that, I thank the Gynae Forum, Delhi Gynae Forum East Delhi again. And I would just take the liberty of inviting all of you for the NACHI annual conference, which is scheduled on 27th, 28th and 29th of August. I'll be sharing the flyers soon. And all of you are cordially invited on behalf of the organizing committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
And Dr. Mamta?
Mamta, ma'am,
You know, I find Etisoban to be the best, but unfortunately it is very, very expensive. So we are just left with nifedipine. We use nifedipine, and nifedipine is to be used to gain those 2-3 days where you can give steroids. That is all. You cannot continue it, you know, like for 2 months or something like that. We have never done it. So, and I somewhere agree that we do give nifedipine and we do give steroids, but the minute we stop steroids, some patients come back to us with preterm labor in 2-3 days time, and others just continue their pregnancy. Maybe those are the ones who would have anyway continued with their pregnancy, you know, but it is difficult to just do nothing.
That's true.
I wish
Thank you so
Etisoban was slightly less expensive, and then we could have used it more often.
So that means in your practice, you're not using Retorodine or Isosoxapirin?
No.
You're not.
We
So it's mainly
use Lever,
nifedipine.
not now.
I have 2 questions, Dr. Meenakshi and all the chairperson. One is about the antibiotics used in the preterm labor. What antibiotics you are using in your practice? Because we have lots of guidelines which are coming from the abroad, but we want to know what we are using in our practice. And the second is about the second dose of steroid. Sometimes the patient, we have given the steroid 1 month back, and our pediatricians say that second dose of steroid to be given. Are you giving in your practice if you are giving the single, or you are giving the full dose?
For this antibiotic, it has been found to be effective in preterm labor only when there is a PPROM associated. And in these patients, we usually give erythromycin basically to the patient. And as far as the corticosteroid is concerned, basically it's a single steroid therapy, should ideally be timed that to be given within 7 days of delivery, when you are expecting that the patient is going to deliver within 7 days, and the baby, gestation age is less than 34 weeks, a single course of corticosteroid therapy to be given. But if a patient had received 1 course earlier and is more than 14 days have passed and had come presented again in preterm labor, then a repeat single course, second course of corticosteroid can be given if the gestation is less than 34 weeks. And if the patient presented after 34 weeks and had already received a corticosteroid, then those patients should not be receiving a second course of corticosteroid.
Can I add something here?
Yes, ma'am.
She is very right. There is only 1 dose of rescue steroids. These are known as rescue steroids. So only 1 dose, 1 course of rescue steroids. And as far as less than 37 weeks is concerned, they say you can give a single course of corticosteroids if the patient has never received one before 34 weeks. So that's another thing which has come up recently.
So Dr. Ela,
The antibiotics
Yeah.
if you're not
I
using
need from
a
you.
patient who is not having PPRO, because I have seen prescriptions with lots of antibiotics with the patient on preterm labor, but not in the PPROM. So therefore, I'm just asking why we are using lots of antibiotics. What do you do in your practice?
Madam,
We should
Madam
start from this.
Yeah, I will ask Ma'am.
Yeah.
Madam? Ma'am, your comments on this.
Do you want me to speak on this? Jyoti?
Yeah, I was asking Dr. Shada Jain, Madam.
Okay,
Give her
ma'am.
comments on the antibiotics.
Many
With the preterm labor.
times when people ask questions, they want to judge the knowledge of the person who is speaking. And if you have something to say, you must speak. You should not put it in the form of questions. You should come as comments. What is your comment about it?
Basically, we are not using as such antibiotics in preterm labor, because I'm asking, Meenakshi is junior to me, and naturally I will not just ask question for asking, but I wanted we should start routinely, if we are using antibiotics, not a problem in our practice because so many times guidelines are different, but patients are different in corporate. So therefore, most of the people are starting. If by chance they are starting, what antibiotics we should routinely start? Because erythromycin, we know that we can't give for the long time. It's a very difficult to digest erythromycin. So mostly I've seen the prescriptions with the either ampicillin, augmentin. And our pediatrician says if you are giving the augmentin for the long time, it can affect the baby. Therefore, just I was asking, what is your opinion? Because you're very senior and you have seen so many babies are coming. So what is your opinion about that? So that we can do the practice accordingly.
Let Dr. Ela speak, then I'll make a final comment. Dr. Ela, you want to make any comments, please?
Yeah, absolutely, ma'am. And it was really very lucid presentation and very good deliberation, Meenakshi. I really saw that you have covered almost everything in preterm labor. What I want to say regarding in Indian scenario, because it is a developing country and we are here, our practices are very, very different. Everyone is doing something different here. So we need some real guideline in the sense that which really tells us what to do and what not to do. The most important thing I want to say that prevention of preterm labor should be really emphasized in our setup because low socioeconomic status, anemia, and all, especially in IVF patients, because of the triplets and twins and these patients really create a lot of preterm labor because of the, and we are not able to save those babies. That is the very, very, very sad thing about it, that prematurity is very, very common in triplets and multiple pregnancies, specifically during IVF conceptions. So we should make these guidelines that it should be strictly followed in IVF cases. Secondly, what I want to say that using Isox Supreme is the very safe and we are using for ages. And I feel that all the patients who are only not in established labor, but they are showing sign of contractions, they really respond to Isox Supreme very well. We should think about the higher and tocolytics when we think that the associated cervical dilatation is starting with it. So it becomes very important to actually clinically see the patient if really she is going in preterm labor or you are suspecting just irritable uterus, then accordingly you should use it. As far as the antibiotic is concerned, I feel that in preterm labor antibiotic is not recommended unless there is associated infection like UTI or something like that, because sometimes urinary infection initiates preterm labor.
Now, as far as preterm labor is concerned, can we have this screen off, doctor?
Meenakshi, can we have this off?
Now, as far as I think Dr. Ela has very rightly highlighted that there are two causes which we gynecologists should definitely see. One main cause is multiple gestation, and second cause is history of preterm birth. These two things cannot be ignored. Rest is an eyewash, and that's why in this particular country, as far as the incidence of prematurity in the last 3 decades, we have not been able to decrease. 3 decades I'm talking about. And 2/3 of our patients are coming from a low risk patient. Kaun patient preterm se aa jayega hame malum nahi. But these two things are definitely very important. She has very beautifully highlighted about the screening. The screening in modern time is 16 to 24 weeks. We don't bother about it. And that is the time when we are doing an ultrasound, we must pick up cervical length. If the cervical length is less than 25 and there is no history previously, these patients benefit. I give them both vaginal progestogens and I give them injectable progestogens. If patient has come to me prior to 24 weeks, if there's a history of prior history, then I give an encerclage. Otherwise, I don't give encerclage. Over a period in the last 2-3 years, we have changed our policy as far as encerclage is concerned. We rely on a short cervix with vaginal progestogen and I supplement with injectable progestogens. People may say that I'm overdoing it, but that's the way I do it. my practice of giving Duodilon, morning, afternoon, evening has gone. We don't give it anymore. Now, when it comes to tocolysis, as for the diagnosis is concerned, we do not have any diagnostic things with us. Fibronectin is Western word. We are not doing it. Is not available with us. So with us is only clinical. Once established diagnosis is there, we really can't do anything. And that's why American College very rightly says there is no place of tocolytic therapy because atosibon is not available there. And everybody says that WHO and all, in case if beta mimetic drugs, we have used left and right isoxaprime, and I still find many a time when a patient has got, this is not a significant dilatation, it's less than 2 centimeter, isoxaprime works. And that is why they have taken a survey these days of a senior doctor, something like 300 doctors they've interviewed. What are you doing it? Is it effective or not? And this is what the survey which Dr. Meenakshi was trying to find it out. But atosibon, as far as I am concerned, we see ART patients where they've spent lots of money on this, and somewhere around 26, 27 weeks, they when they have at times preterm labor, spending 50,000 rupees is worthwhile. And all my patients, where they have used 6 or 7 patients have done wonders. We have gained 4 weeks, 6 weeks, even 7, 8 weeks with atosibon. So this is what the story is. We use isoxaprime, as madam has said, 4 ampules, we are using it. But I do not continue it on a tablet wise around the clock subsequently. Because I find progestogens do a great job, and people like me definitely like to use vaginal as well as injectable. Injectable, I have been using it for last almost 40 years. I've been using that particular drug. Now, coming to antibiotics. Antibiotics, madam has already mentioned about it. Unless there's a premature rupture of membrane, there is no place for antibiotics.
लेट टाइम बहुत है, ऐसे तो पता नहीं कैसे चल पाएगा. ऊपर से मेरी मीटिंग शुरू हो गई है, सारे कपड़े डाल दिए.
I think someone has to mute. I don't know who the person is. It's very interesting talk, but I think we'll take it.
Doctor, एक वो discipline वाला code लगाना. It worked very well yesterday. So I find that they should definitely be told how to